At the family meeting, Mom said she'd take my sister. Dad said he'd keep my brother. And me? Let the court decide. 16 years later. They knocked on the door of the art studio bearing my name, smiling like they never abandoned that kid. But this time, I am the one saying no, and the whole town is about to find out why. My name is Rowan Mercer. I am 28 years old. From where I stand, I can smell the linseed oil and drying plaster of my studio, Silverline Atelier. It's here in Ashford, Maine. I shape paper, flour, and glue into faces, masks. I build structure from things people discard. I know this craft intimately. I know what it means to be layered, reinforced, and painted over just to hold a shape. But before this, before the studio, before the name on the lease, there was the night the original mold was broken. The night I learned I was the part of the set that was left behind. I was 14. I was supposed to be finishing homework, but I was upstairs in my room, trying to fix a papier-mâché cat mask for the school art fair. It was a stupid, simple thing. The wire whiskers I'd tried to implant were crooked, and the left ear, heavy with too much paste and impatience, had started to sag. I was holding it under the desk lamp, the yellow light making the wet gray pulp look even more pathetic, when the voices downstairs stopped being a murmur and sharpened into blades. Mom and Dad, Marielle and Thomas. Their arguments usually had a rhythm, a familiar, tired cadence of mortgage payments and who forgot to take out the trash. This was different. This was the sound of tearing. I set the mask down. I crept to the landing. The banister was smooth, worn pine, sticky in the humid summer air. I pressed my ear to the gap between the spindles, tasting the dust and varnish. We cannot afford to fight this, Marielle. Dad's voice was low, strained. He was a carpenter. His voice was usually full of sawdust and confidence. Now it sounded hollowed out. It's done. We're done. Fine, Mom snapped. Her voice was brittle, like ice cracking. She worked in administration, and she sounded like she was finalizing a budget. Fine, but I'm taking Daisy. She needs me. She's the youngest. A pause. The house exhaled. The refrigerator compressor kicked on, a low hum vibrating through the floorboards. Jude stays with me, Dad said, definitive. He knows the workshop. He's almost a man. He stays. Silence. Not a long silence. Just long enough for me to stop breathing. It was a pocket of dead air. I waited for my name. I was the middle. I was the quiet one. I was the one who was good at art. Surely that counted. And Rowan? Mom asked. Her voice was impatient, the way she sounded when she was pointing out a forgotten chore. What about Rowan? Dad sighed. It was a heavy, terrible sound, a sound of structural collapse. We let the court decide for Rowan. Let the court decide. The words didn't make sense. They were just sounds. I looked down at my hands, which were still covered in drying paste. I went back to my room, picked up the cat mask. I'd used too much water. The cheap newspaper strips were dissolving, the printed words blurring into gray pulp. The mask collapsed inward, wet and cold, a soggy, hollow thing. I understood. In that physical, chilling way a body understands before the mind does, that I was the mask. I was the thing nobody had a plan for. I learned silence that night. I learned that if you sit perfectly still, if you make your breathing shallow and slow, you can almost pretend you haven't been torn. You can make yourself so small that the pieces feel like they are still touching. I didn't go downstairs. I sat on my bedroom floor until the lights in the hallway went out. One by one, I clutched the ruined mask, which dripped cold, floury water onto my jeans. The smell of that house for the next 2 weeks was the smell of an ending. It wasn't just the pine cleaner Mom used obsessively, or the faint metallic tang of Dad's tools from the garage, or the heavy scent of the pot roast that always simmered on Sundays. It was the smell of those things stopping. The pine cleaner was replaced by the dusty, papery smell of cardboard boxes being taped shut. The kitchen stopped smelling like food and started smelling like stale coffee and bleach. It was the smell of a family decomposing. The court was worse. It smelled like floor wax and cheap, burnt coffee. It was beige. Everything was beige. The walls, the linoleum floors, the tired face of the caseworker assigned to me. I sat on a hard wooden bench. Daisy had cried when Mom packed her pink suitcase. Jude had just slammed his door and put his headphones on. I hadn't cried. I was perfectly, frighteningly still. I had become the calm face I used to practice drawing. The judge, a man with a face like tired leather, read from a file. My name, my age, 14, my grades, which were good. He read the words, "No formal care plan submitted by either parent." I was not a daughter. I was a logistical problem. He looked at me over his glasses. The room was hot. The court awards temporary custody of Rowan Mercer to the Department of Family Support, DFS. 3 letters that meant I was now an item on a state budget. "Rowan?" the judge asked, and his voice was almost gentle, which made it worse. "Do you have anything you want to say?" The stillness broke. The words came out, small and sharp, tasting like rust and the paste I'd had on my hands. "I just want to be where someone actually wants me." The room went absolutely silent. The court reporter, a woman with bright red nails, stopped typing. My parents, sitting 10 feet apart, stared straight ahead, at the judge, at the wall, at anything but me. Nobody wanted me. The silence was the answer. The first house smelled like industrial bleach and boiled vegetables. It was a group home. 6 beds to a room, bunk style. My caseworker, a tired woman named Ms. Alvarez, left me at the door with a pat on the shoulder that felt like she was brushing off dust. The rules were on a laminated sheet taped to the dining room wall. No closed doors, ever. Lights out at 9. No personal food items. No crying after 9 p.m. That was a real rule. Crying, it seemed, was inefficient. I hid 2 things in the bottom of my backpack, wrapped in a sweatshirt, my sketchbook, and the half of the cat mask I'd managed to save. The other half had fused to the landing steps at home and been thrown out. This half, 1 eye, 1 ear, a misshapen cheek, was my witness. I drew at night, under my blanket with a penlight I'd managed to keep. I didn't draw what I saw. I didn't draw the peeling green paint or the faces of the other girls. Faces that were either too hard or too empty. I drew the faces I needed to see. Calm faces, serene faces, faces that looked like they belonged to themselves. I lasted there 3 weeks. One of the older teens, a boy who always looked like he was chewing on glass, grabbed my sketchbook while I was waiting for the phone. He flipped through the pages, laughing at the faces. "What is this, freak?" he sneered. "Making faces?" I didn't hit him. I didn't yell. I just grabbed the book back and walked away, my stomach churning. But he reported me. He told the house manager I was hoarding, that I was non-communicative and antisocial. The house manager wrote a report. The word they used was difficulty integrating. It was a failure. I was the failure. My silence, the one thing that had kept me from shattering, was now a symptom. Ms. Alvarez drove me to the next placement. She didn't say much. The radio played softly. The second house was different. It was clean. It was terrifyingly quiet. It was run by a couple who treated foster care like a sterile, efficient business. There was always enough food, exactly measured. The sheets were clean, exactly folded, but it was cold. I had my own room, but the cold radiated off the walls. I wasn't a child. I was a guest of the budget. I was a per diem rate. I was a check they cashed on the 1st of the month. Here, I perfected the art of being invisible. I learned the skills of the quiet. I locked my backpack. I kept my secrets buried deep. I ate everything on my plate, said please and thank you, and disappeared into the beige walls. I learned to make new masks. I salvaged cereal boxes from the recycling bin in the garage, soaking the cardboard in the bathroom sink in the middle of the night, molding it over my knee, pressing the layers together until they were firm. I made a new face, stiff and gray, from processed cornflakes. It was a face that could withstand anything. I tried to call them. I used my 15 minutes of phone time. I called Mom, her new apartment, the one she shared with Daisy. It went to voicemail. Hi, Mom, it's Rowan. I'm at a new place. It's fine. Just call me. She never called back. I called Dad. He picked up. He was at a job site. I could hear the high-pitched scream of saws. Rowan? Kid, I'm in the middle of this. Can it wait? I just wanted to know. I'll call you after this job, okay? Be good. The click was loud, definitive. Only Daisy remembered. A thin Halloween card arrived, forwarded by DFS, a week late. On the front was a cat, drawn in orange crayon, with a wobbly smile and 3 whiskers. Inside, in her new second-grade handwriting, it just said, I miss you. Mom says hi. I stole a silver marker from the kitchen junk drawer. I found a piece of clean, white paper. I drew a cat on it, a sleek, shining silver cat, impossibly perfect, with almond eyes and proud whiskers. I mailed it back to her. Maybe next Halloween, I wrote. It was a soft lie, but it was the first time I had chosen the color. It felt better than the truth. The winter in Maine is not gentle. It freezes everything. The harbor locked with ice. My second foster family announced they were transitioning out of care. The budget was ending. Ms. Alvarez sat across from me at the public library. Her car was idling outside. It was too cold to turn it off. She looked exhausted. Her coat was still on. Rowan, she said, not meeting my eyes, instead looking at the flyer for a bake sale. We are considering a pre-adoptive home, a permanent placement. I didn't know what that meant. It sounded like another word for failure. It sounded like giving up. That night, I sat in the dark of the guest room, the sound of the television droning through the wall. I took out the original, ruined piece of the cat mask. It was hard now, stiff as a shard of wood. The paint flaked off, the gray pulp exposed. I held its one eye up to my own. I was 15. I was an item. I was a case file. I held that broken piece, that silverless line, and I made a promise to the shadow on the wall. I would find a place to belong. I would build it myself if I had to, and I would never, ever be the one left waiting for a court to decide again. Ms. Alvarez drove me on a Tuesday. The sky was a hard, bright blue that hurt to look at. My breath fogged the window of her state-issued sedan. I had learned to hate these drives. They always meant a new house, a new set of rules, a new reason to stay small. This one is different. Rowan, she said, her eyes fixed on the road. She always said that. How? I asked, watching the frozen pines blur past. It's a pre-adoptive placement. The word adoptive landed in the car like a stone. It was heavy, terrifying, and final. It meant this wasn't a temporary stop. This was an audition. It means they're interested, she said, trying to soften it. They've read your file. They had read my file. They knew I was the difficulty integrating girl, the no formal care plan girl. I clutched the strap of my backpack, the hard ridge of the broken mask pressing into my leg through the canvas. We pulled into the driveway of a small, 2-story house. It was painted a soft, defiant blue, the color of a summer sky, not a winter one. There was a wide wooden porch, and hanging from the eave was a set of wind chimes, bronze tubes and pieces of stained glass, chiming softly in the brutal January wind. Before Ms. Alvarez could even knock, the door opened. A woman stood there. She was shorter than I expected, with graying hair pulled back in a messy knot, and a smudge of blue paint on her cheek. You must be Rowan, she said. Her voice was low and calm. I'm Lena Hart. Welcome. It's freezing. Get inside. I stepped over the threshold, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. It was not bleach. It was not boiled vegetables. It was warm. It was cinnamon, and baking bread, and something else. Something sharp, bright, and chemical, like turpentine or oil. Elias is on his way, Lena said, taking my thin coat. He got held up at the hospital. She led me into the kitchen, which was painted a buttery yellow. There was a pot of soup simmering on the stove. There was a cat, a big orange thing, sleeping on a chair. It felt lived in, dangerous. Elias is a pediatrician, Lena explained, pouring hot water into a mug. Dr. Hart, I'm an art teacher at the high school, and that smell you're noticing? That's linseed oil. My studio is in the basement. Come on, I'll show you. She didn't ask me about the drive. She didn't ask me about the last house. She just led me through a door off the kitchen and down a set of wooden steps. The basement wasn't dark. It wasn't cold. It was the source of the bright, creative smell. It was a workshop. One entire wall was shelves, filled with powders and glass jars, rolls of paper, stacks of canvas, and plaster molds of faces, hands, and leaves. There was a pottery wheel in the corner, caked in dry gray clay. A long, scarred wooden table dominated the center of the room. It was an arsenal of creation. I must have stopped breathing, because Lena paused. It's a bit of a mess, she said, but she was smiling. I couldn't find the word. It's real. She looked at me, really looked, and her eyes were kind. Yes, it is. She walked over to a shelf and picked up a bag. Ms. Alvarez mentioned something in your file. She said you make masks. My stomach dropped. I felt exposed, like the boy in the group home was about to laugh at me. I gripped my backpack. Lena just held up the bag. It was flour. I have plaster. I have wire mesh. I have gauze, she said, tapping a bag of wheat paste. But I've always found that for fine layers, nothing beats old-fashioned flour and water. She set a clean glass bowl on the table. She poured some flour in, then some water, and pushed it toward me. I heard you make masks, she repeated, not as an accusation, but as a question, an opening. My hands were shaking. I slowly unzipped my backpack. I took out my sketchbook, and then, the broken half of the cat mask. I laid the stiff, gray shard on her clean, scarred table. Lena didn't flinch. She didn't look at it with pity. She looked at it with a professional eye. That's a good armature, she said, tapping the stiff paper. It held its shape. She pushed the bowl of paste toward me again. Do you want to fix it? It's not broken, I whispered, the words surprising me. It's half? Then let's make it whole, she said, and turned to organize her jars, giving me space. I worked, for the first time in over a year. I worked without hiding. I used her newspaper, her paste. I built out the other side of the face, but I didn't try to hide the seam. I didn't try to smooth over the place where it had been torn. I left the crack. I worked the new wet pulp right up to the old, hard edge. I made the crack a feature. When I was done, I looked at the new, whole mask. It was a face of two halves, one old and gray, one new and wet. Lena came back, holding a small jar. It was silver paint, the kind used for models. Every good mask needs a finish, she said. I took the brush. I didn't paint the whole thing. I painted only the crack, a bright, shining silver line right down the middle, where the two halves met. A key turned in the lock upstairs. That'll be Elias, Lena said, wiping her hands. Let's leave this to dry. We'll eat. Dr. Elias Hart was a tall, thin man who seemed to be made entirely of gentle angles. He smelled of hand sanitizer in the cold night air. He shook my hand like I was a person, not a file. Rowan, it's good to meet you. I apologize for being late. We had an epidemic of swallowed quarters today. We ate at the kitchen table. The soup was thick, full of vegetables and barley. Elias told a story about a 3-year-old who had brought his hamster to his checkup, convinced it had a cold. He didn't ask me about my parents. He didn't ask me about school. He just asked, "How was your day?" It was quiet, I said. Quiet is good, Elias said, passing me the bread. Quiet is underrated. That night, they put me in a room on the 2nd floor. It wasn't a guest room. It was just a room. The walls were yellow, Like the kitchen. There was a real bed, with a quilt, and the door had a lock. I sat on the bed and listened. I heard the house settle. I heard the wind chimes, a random, gentle music outside the window. I didn't lock the door. A few days later, Lena's laptop was open on the kitchen counter. A video call. "Rowan, come say hi," Lena called. A face smiled on the screen. He looked to be in his early 20s, with Lena's hair and Elias's eyes. "This is our son, Theo," Elias said. "He's at school, finishing his engineering degree." "Hey," the face said. He had an easy, open smile. "So you're Rowan. I've heard good things. Welcome to the chaos. I hope they're feeding you." "Theo, be nice," Lena admonished. "I am being nice," he laughed. "Just means I won't get any leftovers when I come home for break. Nice to meet you. Future sister." Future sister. He said it so easily. He said it like it was a fact, not a possibility. I waved, mute. The days turned into weeks. A routine began to form, solidifying around me like the layers of papier-mâché. I had a chair at the dinner table. It was my chair. No one else sat in it. I had chores. Feed the cat, take out the recycling. I woke up to the smell of coffee and linseed oil. Ms. Alvarez came for her monthly check-in. It was the first time she hadn't met me at a library or in her car. She sat in the living room, on a comfortable sofa, holding a mug of tea. "So," she said, pen poised over her clipboard. "How are things, Rowan?" I looked at the art on the walls. I listened to the sound of Elias in the kitchen, humming along to the radio. "I want to stay," I said. It was the first time I had ever said it. It was the first time it had ever been true. Ms. Alvarez stopped writing. She looked at me. "Okay, Rowan, okay." That night, I went to the basement. The mask was dry. The silver line was stark and beautiful. I took it up to my room. I cleared a space on the wall opposite my bed, and I hung it there. It was the first thing I would see when I woke up. I named it Half Moon. Lena saw it. She just nodded. "Good. Now, let's talk about reinforcement." She took me back to the studio. She showed me how to lay the paper strips, not just flat, but cross-hatched. "The paper is thin," she explained, her hands moving deftly. "One layer is just wet paper, but when you build the layers, when you cross them, when you give them the right adhesive, that's structural integrity. That's how you make something strong enough to be worn." Layers. I understood layers. I was made of them. Elias had his own lessons. He saw me one evening, after a letter had arrived from DFS, a sterile update on my biological parents, forwarded by court order, and found me staring at the wall, my breathing too fast, the cold seeping back in. He sat next to me, not too close. "In my world," he said quietly, "we talk about rhythms. A healthy heart has a steady, normal sinus rhythm. Thump-thump, thump-thump, panic, anxiety. That's an arrhythmia. The rhythm is broken. It's too fast. Or it's skipping. It feels scary. But it's just a broken rhythm." He put his hand on his own chest. "You don't have to fix the problem right now. You just have to find the rhythm again." He taught me to breathe. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. "Feel your pulse," he said. "Find the baseline. That's your anchor. The rest is just noise until you're ready." A medical metaphor for self-soothing. It was the most practical gift I had ever received. That night, I lay in bed. The letter was in the trash. I listened to the wind chimes. They weren't frantic. They were a steady, random music. Thump-thump, cling, thump-thump, cling. My new heartbeat. I fell asleep. I slept through the whole night. It was spring. The snow had melted, and the first green. Stubborn shoots were pushing up in the garden. It had been 4 months. We were in the living room. Theo was home for the weekend, asleep upstairs. The television was off. Lena was holding Elias's hand. They both looked at me. "Rowan," Elias began. His voice was steady, his doctor voice, but his hands were tight. Lena and I, "We filed the paperwork," he said. My breath caught. "We'd like to make this official," Lena said, her voice soft. "We know you're almost 16. We know you can make your own choices soon. But we want you to know, the choice is already made for us. We would like to adopt you, Rowan, if you'll have us." I looked at them. Lena, with paint forever on her hands. Elias, who smelled like soap and always knew when the rhythm was broken. I thought about the beige rooms. I thought about the judge. I thought about the words, "Let the court decide." These two people weren't letting anyone else decide. They were choosing. They were choosing me. I looked at Lena. I looked at Elias. I nodded. My head moved. A simple, clear motion. Up and down. Yes. And for the first time in my life, making a decision that would change everything. I wasn't shaking. The adoption paperwork was not a single sheet. It was a stack, thick and heavy, full of questions that felt like traps. But one box, one small rectangle on a page near the top, held all the weight. Desired legal name. I stared at it for an hour, sitting at the scarred wooden table in Lena's studio. Rowan Hart. It looked clean. It looked new. It felt like a fresh coat of paint, covering everything beneath. It was an answer. Rowan Mercer. That was the name on the file. It was the name that had been read aloud by the judge, the one attached to no formal care plan. It was the name on Daisy's crayon-scribbled letters. It was a name I associated with silence, with waiting rooms, with the smell of bleach. To erase it felt like a lie. It felt like pretending the crack in the half-moon mask didn't exist. "You can be both," Lena said, entering the studio so quietly I almost didn't hear her. She had a mug of tea, which she placed next to my hand, not touching me, just offering. "How?" "A name is a label," she said, picking up a piece of dry clay. "But your identity, that's what you build, layer by layer. You can be a Hart, because that's who you're choosing to be, and you can be a Mercer, because that's a part of the story you survived. You don't have to burn the first chapter to start the second." I looked at the box. I picked up the pen. I wrote, "Rowan Mercer," and left it at that. The name Hart wasn't for a piece of paper. It was for my heart. It was the name I kept on the inside, the name I used to find my baseline when the rhythm broke. I would belong to them without erasing myself. The past, however, was not finished erasing me. A letter arrived, forwarded by DFS, a final piece of administrative housekeeping before the file was sealed. It was from Marielle. The envelope was crisp, expensive cream-colored stock. Her handwriting was perfect, looping cursive taught in a different generation. It was not an apology, it was an announcement. "Rowan," it began, as if addressing a colleague. "I hope this finds you well. I wanted to share the good news that my new family is settling in wonderfully. My husband's work is very demanding, but we found a lovely home in Northwood. She had remarried. She had a new family." The words were chosen with the precision of a surgeon, cutting me out without leaving a bloody, obvious wound. It was a polite, sterile amputation. "Daisy is enjoying her new school, though she misses the coast. Please know that I often think of you and wish you the best in your new placement." Placement, not family. Placement. It ended with, "Fondly, Marielle." I folded the letter and put it in my sketchbook. It was evidence. A week later, the phone rang. Elias answered, then handed it to me, his brow furrowed in that gentle, worried way of his. "It's Thomas," he said. I took the receiver. My palm was instantly sweating. "Rowan? Kid, how's it hanging?" Dad's voice. It was loud, booming, and full of a manufactured cheer that always preceded a request. "Hi. Dad? Hey, listen. Big news. Big news. You know Rebecca? From the old neighborhood? Well, we reconnected. We're getting married." "Oh," I said. "Congratulations." Yeah, it's great. And get this, she's got kids. We've got kids. We just had twins. Rowan, 2 boys. Can you believe it? Your old man, a father of twins. A father, He was adding, a new wife, 2 new sons. His family was a math equation where he just kept adding, never noticing the number he had subtracted. He had a +4. I was a -1. That's a lot, Dad. It's great, he boomed. Listen, I gotta run. The little guys are screaming for a bottle. I'll keep in touch, kid. Be good. The line clicked. I stood there, holding the phone, the dial tone a hollow, empty sound in my ear. He had not asked me a single question. I went to my room. I sat down and, on a piece of clean, white paper, I tried to be the person they needed. I tried to be as polite and detached as they were. I wrote a letter back to Marielle. Dear Marielle, thank you for the update. It is good to hear you and Daisy are well. I wrote one for Thomas. Dear Dad, congratulations on your marriage and the twins. That is very exciting news. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I simply added one line at the end of both. I am doing well. I am in a pre-adoptive home with a family called Hart. Lena, the mom, has an art studio, and she's teaching me. I sealed them. I sent them. I had proven I could be as calm and collected as they were. The test came a month later. Halloween was approaching. It was the one holiday I still associated with Daisy's wobbly cat drawings. I made a small bid, a tiny, hopeful extension. I called Marielle's new number. Marielle? It's Rowan. I was wondering if maybe I could see Daisy for Halloween? A pause. Oh, Rowan, that's thoughtful. But it's just not a good time. Things are still so new. And we're trying to establish our new family traditions. She's very sensitive. It's just not a good time. Translation: You are not part of our tradition. Okay, I called Dad. Dad? I was wondering if I could meet the twins, maybe before Halloween? Ah, kid, I don't think so. Rebecca's kids. They're sensitive, you know? And the twins are so small. We don't want to confuse them or upset them. Let's just let things settle. Don't want to make things messy. Translation: You are the mess. I hung up the phone. I walked into the kitchen where Lena was reading, her feet up on the orange cat. I stood in the doorway. She looked up, and the calm face I had been wearing for 2 years finally, irrevocably, shattered. It wasn't a loud sob. It was a complete collapse. The paste had given out. The layers had failed, and I was just a pile of wet, gray paper on the floor. I slid down the doorframe and put my head on my knees and cried. I cried for the judge. I cried for the beige rooms. I cried for Marielle's new family and Thomas's new sons. I cried because I was the mess. I was the confusion. I was the one nobody was ready for. Lena didn't say, it's okay. She didn't say, they don't deserve you. She didn't say anything. She just got up, came over, and sat on the floor next to me. She didn't hug me. She just put her hand on my back. A firm, warm, steady pressure between my shoulder blades. Her hand was a fact. It was an anchor. It was the baseline. It said, You are not falling alone. I am here. This is real. It was a hand that offered support, not control. I cried until I was empty. The day in court was nothing like the first. This time, it wasn't beige. This time, I wasn't sitting alone on a bench. Elias, Lena, and Theo, who had driven all night from his university, 6 hours, to be there, stood with me. I wore a new dress, a dark blue one Lena had picked out. We stood before a different judge, a woman with kind eyes. She read the paperwork. She smiled at Elias and Lena, then she looked at me. Rowan Mercer, she said, and my old name didn't sting. This court has reviewed the petition for adoption by Elias and Lena Hart. This is a big step. Are you, of your own free will, in agreement with this adoption? The last time a judge had asked me a question, my answer had been a desperate whisper that no one had acknowledged. This time, I looked at Lena, who was crying silently. I looked at Elias, who was trying to smile and failing, his chin trembling. I looked at Theo, who gave me a solid, goofy thumbs up. I turned back to the judge. I found my baseline. My voice was clear. It didn't shake. Yes. Outside, on the courthouse steps, someone took a picture. The 5 of us. Elias, Lena, Theo, and me, and the orange cat, who Lena had insisted on bringing in his carrier, claiming he was a material witness to the stability of the home. Even the judge had laughed. In the picture, everyone is smiling, but my smile is the widest. It's the smile of someone who has finally, after a lifetime of holding her breath, exhaled. Ms. Alvarez was waiting in the lobby. She'd been there, in the back, watching. She came over and held out her hand to me, not as a caseworker, but as a person. The file is officially closed. Rowan. Thank you, I said. For, the drive. She smiled. A small, tired, genuine smile. This was a good day, kid. She turned to leave, then paused. If you ever need anything, well, you know how to find me. She was gone. That night, in my sketchbook, under a drawing of a new mask, one with 2 perfect, whole ears, I wrote a name for a future I was just beginning to see. Silver line, the silver line I had painted down the crack, the silver line that wasn't hiding the break, but celebrating it. I went to Ashford High School. I was Rowan Mercer. I was the girl who lived with the Hearts. I was the art club president. I started a small, unofficial workshop, teaching the kids in the elementary after-school program how to make masks out of paper plates and cereal boxes. I showed them how to make faces that were brave, or funny, or fierce. In my sketchbook, I wrote a motto for myself. It was something Lena had taught me, but I made it my own. Paper is thin. It's the layers and the paste that make it strong. The letters from Daisy continued. They were still routed through DFS for a while, then through Lena. They were simple, childish, and real. Pictures of her new, bigger house, a drawing of her new dog, but always, at the bottom, I miss you. She was the one thread from my old life that hadn't been cut, or turned into a noose. She was just a thread, held loosely, a reminder of a different cat mask, a different sister, a bond made of paper and mail, surviving a continent away, independent of the adults who were supposed to be in charge. I went down to the studio. Half Moon was on my wall, a permanent fixture. I was working on a new one, a face of pure, calm silver. I placed a small candle inside the hollow. The light flickered, and the silver line on the wall mask seemed to glow. Catching the light, the reflection danced in my eyes. I was 16, I was a Mercer, and I was a Hart, and I was, finally, someone who was choosing. The blue house in Ashford was my anchor, but Portland was the ocean. The North Coast School of Art wasn't a basement studio smelling of cinnamon. It was a sprawling, chaotic brick warehouse in the old port, smelling of turpentine, ozone from the welding lab, welding fumes, hot metal, and the salty, briny wind coming off the harbor. I was in the paper sculpture and installation program, which my classmates jokingly called the serious craft department. I was 20, and for the first time, I was surrounded by people who were as weird as I was, people who, like me, found a kind of sanity in the manipulation of materials. I was no longer the art kid. I was just another student covered in gesso and plaster dust. Lena had taught me structure. North Coast taught me scale. My primary instructor was a man named Marlowe. He was a tall, severe man who wore immaculate black jeans and had hands permanently stained with ink. He looked at our work with a terrifying, silent scrutiny. He passed my initial project, a series of delicate, layered papier-mâché faces, with a single grunt. "This is fine, Mercer," he said, tapping one of the masks. "It's clean. It's lovely. And that's your problem. You're still making jewelry." I bristled. "It's a mask." "It's an object," he countered, his voice sharp. "It's not an environment. It's not an experience. Your layers are all on the surface. What happens when you go inside? What happens when the material itself has to do the work, not just the paint?" He pushed me. He took away my newspaper and my flour paste. He pointed me to the industrial materials lab. "Stop being polite," he ordered. "Go make a mess." I hated him for a month. I struggled with materials that fought back. I learned to use fine steel wire mesh, bending it with pliers until my hands ached, creating armatures that weren't just faces, but entire torsos. I learned to pulp recycled paper in an industrial vat, turning discarded office memos and phone books into a thick, gray slurry that I could cast, carve, and stain. I stopped making things to hang on a wall and started making things that inhabited a space. My breakthrough came in my second year. It was a triptych. 3 life-sized figures made of cast paper pulp over steel mesh. They were hollow, and I'd lit them from within. The first was crouched, the paper rough and gray. The second was kneeling, the paper smoother, infused with blue pigment. The third was standing, arms outstretched, the paper sanded to a fine, almost translucent white, glowing with light. I called the piece Becoming. It was accepted into the spring student exhibition. The opening night was a blur of cheap wine in plastic cups and the loud, echoing chatter of the Portland art scene. I stood in the corner, terrified. Then they arrived, Elias, Lena, and Theo, who had driven down from his new engineering job in Boston. They weren't an art crowd, and they looked slightly bewildered, but they were there. Lena stood in front of Becoming for a long time, her head tilted. She didn't say anything, just walked up to the standing figure and lightly touched its glowing, papery hand. Elias just kept saying, "My goodness, Rowan, the size of it." Theo, ever the engineer, was examining the base. "How did you wire the lighting? Is this low voltage? This is a really clean installation, Ro." A woman in an expensive-looking black coat, holding a real glass of wine, was speaking with Marlo. She gestured toward my piece. "That one. Who is the artist?" Marlo pointed to me. The woman glided over. "Your work?" she asked. "Yes." "It's strong. Is it for sale?" I stared. I had no idea. It's student work." "That's not what I asked." She handed me a card. "Think about it." She turned to Lena, who was beaming beside me. "Your daughter is incredibly talented." Lena didn't miss a beat. She didn't say, "Oh, she's," or, "Well, we." She just smiled. A full, radiant smile of pure, uncomplicated ownership, and said, "Yes, she is. I needed money. Student loans covered tuition. But Portland was expensive, and paper pulp was heavy. I found a part-time job in the prop department of the Harbor Light Playhouse, a small, ambitious community theater down by the water. My job was, mostly, to repair the prop damage from the night before, gluing handles back onto teacups, repainting fake swords, and my favorite, fixing the masks. The theater world was fast, cheap, and loud. It was all about illusion. "It doesn't have to be perfect," the prop master, a grizzled man named Sal, told me. "It just has to read as perfect from 20 feet away, under a red light, for 30 seconds. It was the opposite of Marlowe's truth to materials doctrine, and I loved it. It was a different kind of craft. One night, the director of their big winter show, the Winter Stag, came in, frantic. "The masks I ordered from New York. They're junk. They're heavy. The actors can't breathe. We open in 3 weeks. Sal, without looking up from the hot glue gun, just pointed at me. "Kid here makes masks." The director looked at me. "Can you make a stag's head and a whole chorus of snowflakes that are light and can be danced in?" "Yes," I said, the answer coming out before I could second-guess it. "I can't pay you much," he said. "I don't care about the pay," I said, surprising myself with the force of my own voice. "I want a contract, and I want Masks by Rowan Mercer in the program." The director stared at me. "Fine, get me a sketch by morning." I stayed up all night, drinking black coffee and building prototypes out of cardboard, wire, and hot glue. The next day, I had the job. Sal helped me with the paperwork. A small contract, he called it. Read the fine print, kid, he advised, tapping the page. This here? Work for hire. That means they own it. The design, the mask, everything. You want materials credit? That means you own the design. They just own the object. Never give away your design for free. I learned to read clauses. I learned to define the scope of work. I learned to put a price on my time, not just my materials. I was protecting my copyright. I was protecting my name. The past, as it always does, sent echoes. An email arrived in my student inbox from Marielle. It had been years. The subject line was empty. The body was 3 words. Proud of you. That was it. No, dear Rowan. No, how are you? Just, proud of you. I stared at it. Proud of what? How did she even know what I was doing? Had she seen a program? An exhibition flyer? The 3 words hung in the air, demanding nothing, and yet demanding everything. They were a hook, cast into the water, waiting for me to bite. I did not reply. I just moved it to a folder. Archive. A few weeks later, a Facebook message from Jude. I hadn't spoken to my brother in, I couldn't count the years. His profile picture was of him in a hard hat on a construction site. He looked like Thomas. Hey, Rowan, the message read. Long time. Look, this is awkward, but I'm getting married. Her name's Kim. It's out here, a long way from Maine. We're keeping it really small. Just her folks and a couple friends, but you're invited. If you wanted to come. I read the subtext. You're invited. But please don't. You're invited. But we're keeping it small. You're the complication. You're the mess. I looked at his wedding registry. Linked in the message, blenders, towels, a silver picture frame. I went to my studio. I spent a week on his gift. I made a wall mask. A beautiful, serene face. Not a cat, but a human. It was made of soft, handmade paper, embedded with dried flowers and silver thread. It was a face of peace, a blessing for a home. I packed it carefully, with a card. Jude, congratulations to you and Kim. The mask is for your future home. For any future children, I am so happy for you. I can't make the wedding, but I'm sending this with all my love. Rowan. I sent the gift. I did not go. It was time for my senior thesis. All the work, all the theory, all the late nights in the studio had to come together. Marlowe wanted an installation. He wanted an environment. I thought about the letters, the ones I'd received, and the ones I hadn't. Marielle's proud of you, Thomas's phone call about the twins, Jude's half invitation, Daisy's crayon drawings, the sterile administrative updates from DFS, the reports, the no formal care plan. These words, these pieces of paper, had defined me. They had been my walls. I put out a call. I asked the student body for their paper souls, old letters, diaries they were willing to part with, rejection notices, old bills, parking tickets, the paper artifacts of a life. I pulped it all. I pulped Marielle's letter. I pulped Jude's message, printed out. I pulped a photocopy of my own adoption decree. I pulped every piece of paper that had ever tried to tell me who I was. I turned it all into a massive batch of gray-textured slurry. From that slurry, I cast 100 masks. Each one was different. A face emerging from the composite of our shared, discarded words. I installed them in the main gallery, a solid wall of faces, all of them calm, all of them staring forward. I called it Paper Souls. I wrote a small card to hang beside it. We turn the words that were meant to abandon us into the surfaces that support us. The night of the thesis exhibition, the woman in the black coat returned. The collector. She stood in front of Paper Souls for 20 minutes. I'll buy it, she said. It's my thesis, I stammered. I will buy the installation, she said. And I will place an order for a similar, smaller-scale commission for my company's lobby. Marlowe, standing nearby, actually smiled. Congratulations, Mercer, he said. You're a professional. I saw the path. It was no longer a vague hope in a sketchbook. It was a purchase order. It was a contract. Paper Souls won the North Coast Student Prize. The small regional arts paper ran an interview, from found paper to found self. It was a little cheesy, but I didn't care. I had a check in my hand. I was graduating. The Hearts threw me a party in the Blue House. It was full of food and noise and the orange cat, who was now ancient. So, what's next? Row? Theo asked, handing me a beer. Coming to Boston? Taking over the engineering world with your steel mesh genius? No, I said, smiling. I'm going home, to Ashford. Back here? I'm going to open the studio. I didn't have enough money for a full storefront, but I had the commission from the collector, I had the prize money, and I had the tips I'd saved from the Harbor Light Playhouse. I rented a corner. It was just a small, dusty square in the back of a shared artists' co-op. Behind a potter and a weaver, it was 200 square feet. It had one window, and it smelled like clay and old wood. I spent a week cleaning it. I built my own shelves. And then, with a can of silver paint, I hand-lettered a piece of wood and hung it from the door. It didn't say my name. It said the idea. Silverline Atelier, the mending of the crack. The studio was born. The 200-square-foot corner in the co-op lasted 6 months. The commission from the college collector paid for the first and last month's deposit on a real storefront. It was a narrow, deep space on a side street, formerly a shoe repair shop. It smelled of old leather, rubber cement, and possibility. I didn't hire a sign painter. I spent a week carving the sign myself from a thick plank of salvaged pine. I routed the letters deep, filled them with silver, and sealed the whole thing against the Maine weather. It read, Silverline Atelier, Masks and Assemblage by Rowan Mercer. My full name, the one I had kept, and the one I had built. I hung it above the door, the hinges of the bracket newly oiled. My life became a whiteboard, a large 4-by-8-foot sheet of white gloss I'd mounted on the main wall, gridded out with black tape. It was my brain, externalized. Mornings, 9 to noon. Client consultations and production. This was the business. Meeting with theater directors, event planners, or the occasional collector who wanted a paper soul for their living room. Afternoons, 1 to 5. Community workshops. This was the heart. I ran 2 classes, one for elementary kids, like the ones I'd taught at the high school, and a new one for teens. A portfolio prep class. Evenings, 7 until I dropped. Production. This was the engine, building the orders, filling the paste buckets, sanding, painting, sealing. The whiteboard was a riot of blue, red, and black dry erase marker. Ballet measurements due. Call paper supplier. Kids class, armatures. Blue Harbor Mutual. Final sketch. The ballet contract was my first big local test. Ashford had a small, surprisingly robust ballet company. They were staging the Winter Stag. They needed the titular stag, plus a chorus of 10 snow spirits. The stag has to be articulated. Rowan, the director, a nervous man named Francis, explained, wringing his hands in my new, clean studio. The dancer needs to be able to move his head. The jaw needs to move. I spent a week on the mechanism, using lightweight carbon fiber rods, elastic, and a small, hidden lever the dancer could operate with his chin. The mask was enormous, a 6-point rack of antlers made from hollow cast paper, but it weighed less than 3 pounds. When the dancer first put it on and snapped the jaw shut with a satisfying clack, Francis nearly wept. I asked a friend from North Coast to film a short, 1-minute video of the process, not a talking head video, just my hands, laying the wet, gray strips, smoothing the plaster mold, wiring the jaw mechanism. The final shot was the dancer, in full rehearsal blacks, turning his magnificent paper head toward the camera. I posted it on the studio's social media page. In Ashford, a town of 20,000. It was an event. The video was shared by the ballet, then by the local news, then by what felt like every parent of every kid in my workshop. The phone started ringing, not just for theater. Can you make a mask of our grandfather for his 80th birthday? Can you make a replica of our high school mascot? The orders, and the deposits, started to fill the columns on my whiteboard. The business part, the paperwork, was terrifying. I was an artist. I knew how to handle paste, but I didn't know how to handle payroll, or taxes, or liability. Elias sat me down at the Blue House's kitchen table, which was still my sanctuary. He had a stack of pamphlets. "Rowan, this is not a hobby anymore," he said, his doctor voice firm but kind. "This is a business. You have children in your studio. You have clients. You are creating products. We need to talk about liability insurance." He explained the risk. What if a child was allergic to the flour paste? What if a mask broke and injured a dancer? He didn't scare me. He prepared me. He, a pediatrician who dealt with risk and bodies every day, translated the abstract, terrifying world of business insurance into a concrete set of steps, a baseline, a steady rhythm of preparedness. Lena helped with the other side. She came to the studio with a binder. "You're teaching," she said, tapping a stack of paper plates the kids had painted. "That's wonderful, but you're an artist, not just a babysitter. You need a curriculum." She, an art teacher for 30 years, helped me build one. We mapped out a semester. Week 1, the neutral face and emotion. Week 2, armatures and structure. Week 3, character and the animal self. She helped me turn playing with paper into a syllabus, something I could show parents, something that had value beyond just keeping kids busy. She gave my community work the language of a profession. One afternoon, the bell on the studio door chimed. I looked up from a vat of paste. It was Ms. Alvarez. I hadn't seen her in person in years. She looked exactly the same sensible coat, the same expression of tired, profound competence. "Hello, Rowan," she said, looking around the studio. She looked at the wall of masks for sale, at the small, colorful masks from the kids' class, at the massive whiteboard. "Hello, Ms. Alvarez," I said, wiping my hands on my apron. She walked over to the wall. My half-moon mask, the original, was in my home, on my wall. But I had made a new version for the studio, a silver line version. It was the same design, that torn cat's face, healed with a seam of silver. Ms. Alvarez stood in front of it. She didn't touch it. "One of our new trainees," she said, her voice quiet. "She's having a hard time. She thinks the files are just paper. She doesn't see the kids. She just sees the problems." She turned to me. "I'd like to buy this, for my office, to hang right where she and I can see it. A reminder." "A reminder of what?" I asked. "That a file can close," she said, "and a life can open, that recovery is structural." I took the mask off the wall. I put it in a box. "It's not for sale," I said. She looked disappointed. "Oh, I understand. It's to you," I said, sliding the box across the counter. "It's a gift." She took the box. She didn't cry. She just nodded. A sharp, clear acknowledgement. "Okay, Rowan, okay, thank you." The bell chimed again. A few weeks later, this time, I knew who it was. I had been waiting. She was taller. Her hair was different, cut in a smart, collegiate bob, but her eyes were the same. "Daisy?" "Hey, Rowan," she said. She was holding a textbook, Abnormal Psychology. "You're a psych student," I said, gesturing to the book. "University of Southern Maine," she said, smiling shyly. "I'm a junior." An awkward silence fell. She was my sister. She was a stranger. "Do you want some cacao?" I asked, gesturing to the hot plate I kept in the back. Her face lit up. "You still do that?" "Only on Tuesdays," I lied. I made us 2 mugs of hot cocoa. The way we used to. We sat on the stools in the studio. She looked around. "So this is it," she said. "Silver line, It's beautiful, Ro. It's a lot of paper, I said. I have all your letters, she said, looking into her mug. All the cards, the silver cats, I kept them in my psychology textbook. I don't know why. I think they were the only thing that felt real, sometimes. How is she? I asked. I couldn't say the name. Daisy's face tightened. Marielle is busy. She's chairing a hospital benefit. She's very good at it, very organized. And Jude? He's good. They have a baby girl now. He's a good dad. Quiet, like Thomas, but a good dad. She looked at me, and the awkwardness was gone, replaced by a deep, shared sadness. She didn't have to choose, Rowan. She just did. And he just let her. I know, I said. This place, she said, looking at the kids' masks. This is better, isn't it? It's mine, I said. She hugged me, a real hug, her textbook pressing into my back. I'm so glad it's yours. The invitation was on expensive cardstock. The North River Children's Hospital, the largest pediatric facility in the state, was holding its annual Starlight Gala. They were requesting a donation from Silverline Atelier for their silent auction, a high-end mask. I looked at the letterhead, and I saw the name of the gala chair, Marielle, my mother, chairing the event, requesting a donation. I felt the old, cold feeling, the request for a product. Not a relationship, but this wasn't about her. It was about a children's hospital. I called the hospital's development office, getting the name of the director, bypassing Marielle's gala committee. I'd like to decline the donation for the silent auction. I told the woman, a pause. Oh, we're very sorry to hear that. Instead, I said, I'd like to offer something better, a free 6-week mask-making workshop for your long-term pediatric patients. I'll provide all the materials. We can call it Masks for Courage. There was a stunned silence. Ms. Mercer, that would be extraordinary. I launched it at the gala. They gave me 5 minutes on the podium. I stood there, in a borrowed dress, looking out at a sea of tuxedos and gowns. Marielle was at the head table, watching me, a tight, polite smile on her face. I didn't talk about her. I didn't talk about me. I talked about the kids. A hospital can be a scary place, I said, my voice steady, finding my baseline. Especially for a child. So much is done to them. They are told where to go, what to eat, what procedure is next. Masks for Courage is about giving them back a choice, a chance to design their own face, to be a superhero, or a tiger, or a king, to be, for 1 hour, not a patient, but a creator, a person in charge. I held up a small, fierce lion mask made by a 7-year-old in the oncology ward. This is not about paper, this is about courage. The room, which had been full of the clinking of silverware, was silent. Then, they applauded. The Ashford Gazette ran a story the next week. The reporter, a young woman named Kate, had done her homework. She had spoken to the hospital, and she had spoken to Ms. Alvarez. The headline was big, on the front of the local section. Former DFS kid turns scraps into courage. It was the first time my past and my present had been put together in public. The first time the word DFS was attached to my professional name. And I wasn't ashamed. I was relieved. The story wasn't about my abandonment. It was about my work. The day the article came out, I got a call. It was the collector from my thesis show, the woman from Blue Harbor Mutual. Rowan, I saw the article. Wonderful work. We've just opened our new regional headquarters in Portland. The lobby is empty. I hated the architect's suggestion. I want your paper soles. A new, larger installation. Our budget is significant. I sat down. I pulled out a legal pad. I remembered Sal from the theater. I'd be honored to discuss it, I said, my voice all business. I'd need to talk about the lighting specifications, the installation timeline, and the permanent display rights. I was negotiating, and I knew, with a sudden, sharp clarity, that I was going to get the contract. The Blue Harbor contract, on top of the ballet, on top of the workshops, was too much. The whiteboard was a blur. I was drowning in paste. I was production. I was teaching. I was admin. I was a bottleneck. I put an ad on the North Coast School of Arts job board. Studio assistant, part-time, must be proficient in plaster, papier-mâché, and organized chaos. I hired Maya. She was a recent graduate, pierced, dyed, and brilliant. She was quiet, focused, and she organized my supply closet in one day, labeling everything with a tidiness that made my heart sing. She was the first person I had ever officially paid. I stood at the door of my studio at the end of that first month with Maya. She was quietly cleaning brushes. The lights were warm. The shelves were stocked. The whiteboard had client names and a payroll schedule. Silverline was real. It was sustainable. It was paying for itself and for someone else. I was not the girl defined by a court. I was not the placement. I was not the mess. I was Rowan Mercer. I was an employer. I was a business owner. I was the one writing the labels. The success of the Masks for Courage program and the Blue Harbor contract changed the atmosphere in Ashford. Silverline Atelier was no longer just a quirky little shop. It was a recognized name. The studio was stable. Maya was handling the workshop schedules. I was deep in sketches for the Blue Harbor installation, the largest project of my life, when the bell on the studio door chimed. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The kids' class had just left, leaving the scent of flour paste and tempera paint in the air. A woman stood in the entryway, brushing imaginary dust from an expensive-looking beige coat. It was Marielle. I had not seen her, not this close, in 12 years? She looked like her letters, crisp, professional, and immaculate. Her hair was a perfect, silver-blonde bob. She looked at the studio not as a mother visiting a daughter, but as an inspector assessing a property. "Rowan," she said, her voice smooth, infused with a boardroom politeness. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was a facial expression, not an emotion. "Marielle," I said. I stood up from my drafting table, my apron covered in charcoal. I did not move to hug her. I did not offer her cacao. I waited. "This is quite impressive," she said, gesturing vaguely at the masks on the wall. "That newspaper article, it was quite the story." "The story was about the hospital program," I said, my voice neutral. "Yes, of course. The children?" She gave another tight, professional smile. "Which is, in fact, why I'm here. As you know, I am a department manager at North River, and I also still chair the annual gala. Your Masks for Courage was a lovely gesture. A gesture, like I'd sent a greeting card. But this year," she continued, "we want to elevate the theme. The board was so impressed with your visibility. We want to commission you properly." "Commission me for what?" "Masks. For the gala itself. We want to do a Masquerade of Hope theme. We would feature your work in all the press materials. We want you to design a signature line of masks for the major donors." She stepped closer, finally looking at me, but her gaze was calculating. She was assessing a vendor. "It would be a wonderful opportunity for you, Rowan," she said, lowering her voice slightly, as if sharing a secret. "And, frankly, it would be so good for us. It would be a beautiful story for the hospital's profile." She paused, and then she played her card. It landed on the counter between us like a bad check. It would be a wonderful, healing story, a mother and daughter, working together for the children. It would mean so much to my new family's profile in the community. Mother. The word was a tool. It was a project management term. It was a leveraging asset. She wasn't here as my mother. She was here as a manager, using the concept of mother to get a discount on her event's theme. "I see," I said. My hands, I noted, were perfectly steady. "You're here as a representative of the hospital." "Of course," she said, brightening, missing the coldness in my voice. Then you'll understand that I'm fully booked with corporate contracts until the end of the fourth quarter. My schedule is on my website. Her smile faltered. Rowan, I'm sure you could make an exception for the hospital? My Masks for Courage program is my contribution. That's where my work for North River is focused, on the children. This is for the children, she said, her voice gaining a sharp, frustrated edge. The money we raise, then you'll need to send a formal RFP, a request for proposal. Maya, my assistant, handles all new client intake. I gestured to Maya, who was in the back office, pretending not to listen. Marielle's face went stiff. She was being treated like a customer, which, I reminded myself, is exactly what she was. I see, she said again, pulling her professional mask back into place. I will have my committee look into it. She turned and left. The bell chimed, a small, bright sound in the suddenly tense air. That night, the phone rang. It wasn't the studio line. It was my personal cell, a number I rarely gave out. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew the voice. It was the same booming, false cheer that had announced the birth of his twins. Rowan! Kid! It's your old man! Thomas. Hello? Thomas, I said, sitting down at my own kitchen table in my own small apartment above the shop. Hey, listen, I saw that article. Front page of the B section. My daughter, a big-shot artist, building things, just like her dad. He hadn't built anything for me. He hadn't even called. I'm busy. Thomas, what do you need? The fake cheer evaporated instantly, replaced by a hurried, anxious tone. Right, to business. Look, kid, I'm in a bit of a jam, but it's also a huge opportunity. You know I've been trying to get my own workshop off the ground, not just doing jobs for other guys. Thomas Mercer & Sons. You know? A legacy. Mercer & Sons. He had two. I was neither. I found the perfect spot, he rushed on. A great warehouse, all the equipment. But the bank is being a pain. They want a credit guarantee, a cosigner, just to show I'm serious. I felt the cold seep in, the old, beige room cold. Thomas? It's just a formality. Rowan, a signature. But with your new business, that fancy contract I read about, your name on that paper would mean everything. It would show them we're a family of builders. You sign this, and I get the loan. I get the workshop. The two calls, hours apart, formed a perfect, brutal symmetry. Marielle wanted my art to build her social profile. Thomas wanted my name to build his financial one. Not once, not one time in that conversation did he ask me how I was. He didn't ask about the Blue Harbor contract, other than to note it made my name valuable. He didn't ask about the kids' classes. He asked, "What can you do for me?" "You want me to co-sign a business loan," I stated, my voice flat. "I want you to help your dad," he said, the cheer returning, weaponized. "It's what families do." "I have to go," I said. "Rowan, wait. I'll text you the forms. The bank guy says we need it by Friday. Just think about it, kid. This is my dream." He hung up. I sat in the silence, my heart doing that broken rhythm Elias had warned me about. Thump, thump, skr, thump. I grabbed a legal pad. My hand was shaking now, not with fear, but with a cold, crystalline rage. I drew a line down the middle. Left column. Marielle. Wants free discounted design work. Wants mother-daughter story for PR. Conflict of interest. My existing nonprofit work versus her private gala. Emotional cost. Using the word mother as leverage. Right column. Thomas. Wants co-signature on a major bank loan. Financial entanglement. If he defaults, I am liable, my business, my studio, my home, all at risk. Emotional cost. Using the word father as leverage. No plan for repayment, no business plan shared. They had not returned for me. They had returned for my utility. I was not a daughter. I was a line of credit. I was a PR strategy. My phone buzzed. A text from Daisy. Hey, heard Mom might have visited. Just wanted to say, you don't owe them anything. Don't feel guilty if you say no. Ever. Your boundaries are yours. My eyes welled up. The psychologist, the sister, another buzz, a different chat. Jude. It was rare for him to message. Ro, Dad called me. He's trying to get this workshop going. He's under a lot of pressure, but he's bad with money. He's always been bad with money. Don't let him put your name on anything. He'll sink you. Be careful. The children, the ones who had been there. We were the adults now. I went to the Blue House for dinner. I didn't say anything, but Lena knew my face. What is it? Rowan? She asked. After Elias had gone to take a call, I told her. Both barrels, Marielle's visit, Thomas's call. Lena just stirred her tea. She didn't rage. She didn't badmouth them. She just listened. When I was done, she said, They're asking you to carry something very heavy. I don't know what to do, I whispered. If I say no, I'm the bad guy, the ungrateful. Ungrateful? Lena put her cup down. Rowan, you are not a bank. You are not a marketing firm. You are a person, and you are their daughter, whether they acted like it or not. Which means you can't help them, not in the way they're asking. You can only enable them, so I should say no. You should set a boundary, Lena corrected. A boundary isn't a wall to keep people out. It's a line, so you know where you end and they begin. It's so you can help them in a way that doesn't destroy you. You can love your father without paying his debts. You can respect your mother without being her contractor. How? You invite them to a new relationship, one that isn't based on what they can get from you, and if they refuse, that's their choice, not your fault. I tried. I called Marielle. I'd like to talk, not about the gala, about us. Can we get coffee? She was suddenly terribly busy. Rowan, I'm in back-to-back board meetings. Let's circle back after the gala RFP is settled. Just work with my committee. It's cleaner. Cleaner, I called Thomas. I'm not signing that form, but I'd like to meet. I want to see your business plan. Maybe I can help. With the art side, the design. He exploded. I don't need art. I need the loan. What is wrong with you? It's a simple signature. After everything, just forget it. I'll find someone else who actually cares about family. He hung up on me. I went back to my studio. I felt hollowed out. I bought time. I sent Thomas a polite text. I am not in a position to co-sign on any loans. I am happy to offer my time to consult on branding for your new business. Should you secure funding? A professional. Cold. No. I sent Marielle's committee a polite email. Thank you for the inquiry. Unfortunately, Silverline Atelier's corporate commission schedule is full. However, I will be continuing my Masks for Courage program with the pediatric ward, and I look forward to that partnership. A professional, warm no. I went to my whiteboard, the one that ran my life. I wiped away a smudge of old notes, and at the very top, in a clean black marker, I wrote a new rule. Silverline rule. No family contracts without transparency. The next morning, 2 things were in my inbox. The first was a forwarded email from the hospital's development director. It was a formal invitation to the gala, thanking me for my ongoing community partnership, and in the in-kind sponsors section, gala theme masks nominated and conceptualized by Marielle in partnership with Silverline Atelier. She had never gotten my permission. She had never received an RFP. She had just announced it. She had used my name, put it in print, assuming I would be forced to comply. The second item was a FedEx envelope, left on my studio doorstep. I opened it. It was the credit guarantee from Thomas, all 20 pages, pre-filled with his information, and my name, with bright yellow "Sign Here" stickers pointing at the signature lines. Tucked inside was a glossy, color-printed photograph. It was the warehouse. It was a beautiful, sunlit space with high beams. On the photo, in Thomas's familiar, rough handwriting, was a single, desperate, manipulative sentence. "This is our dream. Rowan, don't let me down." I stood there, holding both of their demands, the unspoken, public assumption from Marielle, and the private, emotional blackmail from Thomas. They were not whispers. They were announcements. I looked at the photograph of the empty building. I looked at the gala invitation. They wanted to use my name. They wanted to use my work. They thought that because they were family, they could just take. I put both items on my desk. I looked at the rule on my whiteboard. I would not be answering in whispers. I would not be hiding. If they wanted to use my name in public, then I would give them my answer in public. I would not be defined by their assumptions. I would define myself. The public announcement of my name in Marielle's gala materials was not a request. It was a move on a chessboard. She had publicly claimed my work, assuming I would be too embarrassed or too intimidated to refuse. Thomas's demand for a signature was the other side of the board, a private, emotional pincer move. They had me bracketed. I decided to play on the public board. My first call was not to Marielle. It was to Cynthia, the development director at North River, the one I had organized the Masks for Courage program with. "Cynthia, good morning," I said, my voice calm and professional. "I'm calling about the press release for the Starlight Gala. There seems to be a significant misunderstanding regarding Silverline's involvement." I could hear the sharp intake of breath, the quiet panic of a fundraiser who sees a PR disaster looming. "Oh, Rowan, Marielle, as the gala chair, she had assured us." "I'm sure she did," I said, cutting through the apology. "But I am not a gala vendor. My work with North River is, and has always been, non-profit and patient-focused. Silverline Atelier is not for hire for this event." However, I paused, letting her absorb the blow before offering the solution. "I am happy to participate." "How?" she asked, her voice wary. "1," I said, ticking off the points I had rehearsed. "Silverline will not be providing theme masks for donors. Instead, I will be honored to personally escort several of the patients from the Masks for Courage program. They will wear the masks they created, and they will be the gala's guests of honor." "Oh," Cynthia said. The sound was one of dawning comprehension. "You cannot say no to sick children." 2, I continued. "My participation is contingent on total transparency. My project is a community partnership. That means all partners are acknowledged. This includes the Department of Family Support, which was instrumental in my own understanding of art and recovery." "DFS," she whispered. This was getting complicated for her. "And 3, I finished, my voice like a polite, sharp knife. My work is not to be associated with any single board member's personal profile. It is a donation to the hospital, not a favor to the gala chair. My contribution is nonprofit, and it must be represented as such." I had just handed her a story, a better story, a story of a former foster kid, giving back, empowering other kids. It was a story she could take to her board, a story Marielle could not possibly fight without looking like a monster. After I hung up, I instructed Maya to post a public statement on the Silverline Atelier website, our social media, and to send it as a press release to the Ashford Gazette. The statement was polite, firm, and bright. Silverline Atelier is thrilled to continue its partnership with North River Children's Hospital through the Masks for Courage program. We believe art is a vital community service. To ensure transparency, we want to clarify that this initiative is a non-profit endeavor, dedicated solely to the patients, and is not affiliated with, nor does it serve as a reputational sponsorship for any individual board member or private entity. The phone rang exactly 15 minutes after the post went live. It was Marielle. The smooth professional veneer was gone. Her voice was a low, furious hiss, like steam from a cracked pipe. "What have you done?" "I've clarified my position," I said calmly. I was sanding the edge of a new mask, the rhythm of the sandpaper a counterpoint to her rage. "You've embarrassed me. The board is... They are asking questions. You have made me look like I overstepped." Did you have my permission to use Silverline's name in that press release? I asked. It was a conceptualization. Rowan, you are a part of this family, and you are making this difficult. You are making me look bad. My work is with the children. Marielle, I will see you at the gala. I hung up. She was trapped. She could not uninvite the sick children. She could not publicly feud with the former DFS kid from the feel-good newspaper story. The board, concerned with its own reputation, would now be watching her. She had lost her leverage. Thomas, on the other hand, preferred a direct assault. He came to the studio 2 days later. It was a Thursday afternoon. During my teen workshop, Maya saw him first through the front window. His truck parked half in the loading zone. She came to the back room, her face pale. "Rowan," she whispered. "That man, the one from the phone call you described? He's here. He has the FedEx envelope." "Okay," I said, my pulse finding its baseline. "Keep the teens in here. Lock this door. Put on some music. This is their safe space. He doesn't get to come in here." Maya nodded, her eyes wide, and secured the door. I walked into the showroom. He was standing there, the 20-page loan agreement in his hand, his face red with a righteous, desperate anger. He had not come to talk. He had come to collect. "You ignored my calls," he boomed, his voice too loud for the space, making the delicate masks on the wall tremble. "I answered your request," I said. "I sent you a text. The answer is no." "A text?" he roared. "You deny your father in a text? I am asking for help. I am your family." "You are asking me to gamble my entire life," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through his volume. I walked behind the counter, my territory. I pulled out the legal pad where I had done the math. "I am not in a position to co-sign," I said. "And I'm going to tell you why. You are asking me to be a guarantor. That means if your workshop fails, and you have sent me no business plan, no projections, nothing but a pretty picture, if you default, the bank does not come for you, it comes for me. It will seize my business accounts. It will put a lien on this studio. It will take my home. It will fire Maya. It will end the hospital program. You are asking me to risk every single thing I have built, for a dream you won't even put on paper." He stared at me, his mouth working. He was stunned. He had expected a tearful, emotional refusal. He was not prepared for a risk analysis. "I won't fail," he said, his voice dropping, pleading. "I won't. This is my last chance. Rowan." The cold, beige room emptiness settled in my stomach. The silence of the courtroom, waiting. "You won't fail?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Like you didn't fail me? Like you didn't stand there and let them give me to the state? Like you didn't decide I was the part you could afford to lose?" The color drained from his face. The boom was gone. The anger was gone. There was just a hollow, gray silence. He had no answer. He had never had one. That wasn't. "I am not your last chance, Thomas. I am not your financial backup plan. I am the daughter you didn't keep." I slid the loan papers back across the counter. "You need to leave. You are upsetting my students." He looked at the locked studio door, where the sound of music was now faintly audible. He looked at me, the adult I had become, the one who had just audited his failure. He grabbed the papers, his hand crushing the glossy photo of his dream warehouse, and stormed out. The bell above the door jangled, a tinny, violent sound. A week later, my phone buzzed, a text from Daisy. It was a photo of her, holding a letter I had sent her when she was 10, a card with a silver cat. The caption read, "Found this. You were always my anchor. Remember, you deserve to be loved for who you are, not for what you can do for people. Don't let them make you feel guilty for being strong." The night of the gala was a precisely staged piece of theater. I did not wear a gown. I wore a simple, professional black suit. My +6 were the stars. The kids from the oncology ward, dressed in their finest, wearing the masks they had made, a lion, a robot, a face made of stars. When the MC announced the community partnership segment, he read the script I had provided. And tonight, we are so honored to have the children from the Masks for Courage program, he said, his voice full of genuine warmth. The spotlight found our table. This program is run by the brilliant Rowan Mercer of Silverline Atelier. Rowan, a former recipient of state support herself, has partnered with the hospital and the Department of Family Support to bring this art, this courage, to these incredible kids. The room, full of million-dollar donors, erupted in applause. It was real. It was emotional. It was a story of triumph and community, not of a wealthy family's reunion. I saw Marielle at the head table. Her smile was a rictus, a mask of politeness cemented to her face. She tried. Later, she grabbed a photographer and descended on our table. "Rowan, darling, we must have a picture. The chairwoman and the artist. A family affair." She tried to pull me onto the stage with her, to grab the microphone, to frame this as her success. Her prodigal daughter returned. I stood, politely. I smiled for the camera, but I did not go to the stage. I stayed with the children. I gently took the photographer's arm. "You must get a shot of Alex," I said, gesturing to the boy in the robot mask. He designed the moving jaw himself. I turned the spotlight, gently but firmly, back where it belonged. Marielle was left standing alone, halfway to the podium, her PR moment stolen by the very children she was supposed to be honoring. The Ashford Gazette, covering the gala, got the headline right. "Mask makers steal the show. Patients' art, not donor reunion, shines at Starlight Gala." The article was a glowing review of the Masks for Courage project, highlighting its partnership with DFS. It mentioned Marielle's name only once, in the final paragraph, listing her as the gala chair. Thomas called me the next day. His voice was no longer booming or desperate. It was just mean. "You embarrassed your mother," he growled. "What are you talking about?" "At that party. You humiliated her. You made her look like a fool in front of the whole town, after everything she's done, trying to bring you back in." I was sitting at my desk, sketching. I paused, and on the corner of my notepad, I wrote, "Adults put their own ego above the needs of children. Still, I'm not having this conversation. Thomas, you're a cold piece of work. Rowan, you know that? First you deny your father, then you embarrass your mother. Some family you turned out to be." He hung up. The first no had been delivered in private, with a risk assessment. The second no had been delivered in public, with a press release and a spotlight. I had met both of their demands, and I had neutralized them. I stood in my studio, the afternoon light catching the silver line of the half-moon mask on my wall. I had won. I had protected my boundaries, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt cold. I had just shown two deeply manipulative people that I was no longer a resource they could quietly drain. I had not fixed anything. I had just declared war, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the first, obvious attacks had failed. The next wave would be worse. The public humiliation at the gala was a failure for Marielle. The private rejection of the loan was a failure for Thomas. I had foolishly believed this would be the end, but they were just failed tactics. The strategy remained the same. And when direct assaults fail, the attacker moves to indirect, underground warfare. The first new attack arrived via certified mail, which is never a bearer of good news. It was a thick, creamy envelope from a law firm in Portland, the kind of firm that had polished brass and old leather. It was not a lawsuit. It was a cease and desist notification. I read it standing in my studio, the afternoon sun lighting the dust motes. The letter, drafted by an attorney I now knew was on Marielle's hospital board, was a piece of legal artifice. It claimed that my use of the name Mercer in my professional dealings, specifically Rowan Mercer on the Silverline Atelier sign, was creating significant public confusion. It alleged that my actions were reflecting poorly on the established Mercer family in the community. It politely, firmly, and menacingly demanded that I remove my surname from all business signage, marketing materials, and professional correspondence to avoid further confusion and potential brand dilution for Marielle's branch of the family. It was a power move, pure and simple. She was trying to legally strip me of my name, the name she and Thomas had discarded. She was now trying to reclaim as a brand she had the exclusive right to. My hands were shaking. This was a place I didn't know how to fight. This wasn't a PR battle I could win with sick kids. This was law. Maya found me reading it, my face pale. "What is it?" she asked. I handed her the letter. She read it, her expression hardening. This is insane. She's suing you?" "No," I said, my voice hollow. "She's warning me. She's telling me she has bigger, more expensive weapons than I do." "No, she doesn't," Maya said, her voice fierce. She grabbed her phone. "My cousin, Rafi, he's an IP lawyer, intellectual property. He helped me copyright my print designs. He hates bullies." She made the call. An hour later, I was sitting in a cafe, via video call, with Rafi Cole. He was young, sharp, and wore a t-shirt, not a suit. I explained the situation. He had me email him the letter. I watched him read it, his expression unreadable. "Okay," he said, finally looking up. "This is a bluff, a big, expensive, steaming pile of bluff." "It's not?" "No. First, your trade name, the name of your business, is Silverline Atelier, which you registered with the state, correct?" I checked. "You did. Good. But it says by Rowan Mercer on the sign." "Which is your name," Rafi said, laughing. "You are allowed to use your own name. This isn't a trademark dispute. She doesn't own the name Mercer any more than you do. She's claiming brand dilution and public confusion. That's baseless. What brand is she protecting? Is she also a papier-mâché artist in Ashford? No, the public is not confused. They know who you are. This letter," he tapped his screen, "is harassment, not law. It's designed to scare you into folding. So what do I do?" "You punch back, politely. We'll draft a response, on my letterhead, not yours. We will thank them for their correspondence. Inform them that Rowan Mercer is, in fact, my client's legal name, and she will continue to use it. We will state that her trade name is Silverline Atelier, and there is no public confusion, and then we will politely, but firmly, demand they cease and desist from this line of harassment, or we will be forced to consider our own legal remedies." He smiled. "It's the legal equivalent of stop hitting yourself. It'll cost you for 1 hour of my time, and it will end this, immediately." I paid him. He sent the letter. I never heard from that law firm again. Marielle's underground attack had failed. So, Thomas launched his own. His was not with lawyers. His was with public pity. He started a page on a local community crowdfunding site. "Help Mercer & Sons workshop get off the ground." The photo was the same one he had sent me. The beautiful sunlit warehouse. The text, however, was new. He didn't mention me by name, but he didn't have to. "My dream has always been to build a legacy," he wrote. "A place to pass on my skills to my sons. We found the perfect spot, but we've hit a snag with the banks. It's a hard world out there. Some of us are lucky enough to have our dreams handed to us, to get big corporate contracts and have our names in the paper. Others just have calloused hands and a prayer. I'm not asking for a handout, just a hand up from my community, to show the banks that we still believe in hard work, even when our own families turn their backs." It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive martyrdom, and in a small town like Ashford, it worked. For about 24 hours, the comment section lit up. "This is shameful. Thomas, your daughter is a local hero," said one faction. "What a story," said another. "He's just a man trying to work, and his own successful daughter won't help him? I heard she embarrassed her mother at the hospital gala, too." It was a firestorm. I was horrified. My studio phone got a few nasty calls. I was, as he had intended, the cold piece of work who had abandoned her poor, hard-working father. I was paralyzed. I couldn't respond. I couldn't post my bank statements. I couldn't tell the whole town. He's a bad risk because he abandoned me in a courtroom. Then, my phone lit up. It was a message from Theo. Ro, I saw the post. That is not okay. Do I have your permission to weigh in? Theo, no. It's messy. It is messy, he replied, his text sharp. And he's counting on you being too polite to fight in the mud. I'm an engineer. I like clarity. And I'm your brother. He's attacking my family. I am weighing in. Theo posted his own message, not on the funding page, but on his own public profile, which he then shared to the main Ashford Town community page. He did not mention Thomas. He did not mention the loan. He just told a story. A quick note on family. He wrote, My sister, Rowan Mercer, is the best person I know. Some of you know her from her art or her work with the hospital. But I know her as the kid who survived a system that was designed to break her. He told the story. He told about the no formal care plan. He told about the beige rooms and the laminated rules. He told about my parents, Elias and Lena, finding this brilliant, silent, strong kid who just needed a safe place to land. Rowan has spent her entire adult life building safe places, he wrote. For the kids at the hospital, for the teens in her workshop, for herself. She has done this through hard work, and by setting healthy boundaries. Boundaries are not an attack. They are the simple, necessary rule that says, I cannot set myself on fire to keep you warm. We are so incredibly proud of her, of the business she has built, and the boundaries she keeps. That is all. The silence in the comments was deafening. Then, the tide turned. The comments on Thomas's page changed. Wait, this is the same daughter? The one who was in DFS? So, she was in foster care, built a business from nothing, and he's mad she won't give him money? This looks different now. The local community, the one he had tried to appeal to, did exactly what Theo had done. They sided with the children. They sided with the hospital project. Donations to Thomas's fund, which had spiked and then stopped, completely. The fund flatlined. Mariel, seeing both the legal and public pity attacks fail, tried one last, desperate flanking maneuver. She tried to get to me through Daisy. Daisy called me, I said to Lena over our weekly dinner. I was exhausted. Oh? Marielle invited her to be a guest of honor at a new hospital check presentation ceremony. She wanted to present a check from the reunited Mercer family. She wanted a photo op. Daisy, Marielle, and me. All three of us. What did Daisy say? Lena asked, her fork halfway to her mouth. She told Marielle that her reunited family was with me and you, eating bad takeout and watching movies, and that if Marielle wanted to reunite with her, she could start by writing me a check for, and I quote, 14 years of backlogged therapy. Lena choked on her water, laughing. The psychologist, my God, good for her. She said no, I said. The relief so profound it made me dizzy. She chose me. I was tired of playing defense. I was tired of reacting to their attacks. It was time to change the narrative, to move the entire game to my home field. I called Ms. Alvarez. I have an idea, I said. I want to host a free public workshop at Silverline, and I want DFS to co-host it. A workshop on what? She asked, her voice intrigued. Art and recovery, not just for kids, for caseworkers, for therapists, for other adults in the system, to talk about how creative practice can be a tool for processing. Processing, she repeated. And, I said, I would be honored if you would be the guest speaker to talk about the system. I'll tell my side, the art side. The Ashford Gazette, which was now following my studio's every move, loved the story. They sent Kate, the reporter who had written the gala piece. This time, she wasn't writing about a high society event. She was sitting in my studio, surrounded by flower paste. This time, I didn't let the MC's script speak for me, I spoke for myself. I've spent a lot of time in the last few months being told what family is. I told her, my hands busy molding a new mask. I've been told it's about signing checks or showing up for photo ops, but that's not what I've learned. What have you learned? She asked, her pen poised. I've learned that the safest places are the ones with the clearest boundaries. My biological parents. They see my success as a resource. My family, the Hearts, they see it as a result. The Art and Recovery Workshop. It's about that. It's about showing how to build a structure, a safe place, whether it's out of papier-mâché or out of your own life. The article came out, a full-page feature. The headline was my own quote. Saying no is how I protect this safe place for children. The article was clear, honest, and it was my voice. It was the end of the public debate. The day the article was published, I got a call from Blue Harbor Mutual. The installation for their lobby was complete. The board is speechless, the collector said, her voice warm. They feel Paper Souls is the strongest thing in the building. They want to know. Would you be willing to discuss an expansion? We have 2 other lobbies. The new contract was for triple the original. I hung up the phone. I looked at Maya. Maya, I said, how would you feel about being promoted to studio manager? I'd feel like I need to hire an assistant. Good, I said. Do it. We can afford it. The studio was safe. The business was safe. My family was safe. I had fought off the attacks. I had won the public narrative, and I had secured my future. It was time to close the loop. I went to my whiteboard and cleared a whole month. Maya, I said, we're going to have a party. We're going to have an exhibition. I wrote on the board. Silverline Atelier, a selected retrospective, the journey of the mask. It would be the story, my story. From the Half Moon to Paper Souls to the new Masks for Courage, a celebration of the work. I designed the invitations myself. They were simple. Silver cardstock. I sent one to Elias, Lena, and Theo, one to Daisy, one to Jude, one to Ms. Alvarez and Rafi Cole, and I sent 2 more. One to Marielle's office at the hospital, one to the front desk of Thomas's new, much smaller, rented by the hour workshop space, at the bottom of their 2 invitations, and only theirs. I added a small, polite, printed line. We look forward to welcoming you. Please note, this is a private gallery event. No unauthorized speeches or commercial photography. The final boundary was drawn. The night of the exhibition. Silverline Atelier was unrecognizable. The big industrial lights were off, replaced by dozens of small, warm spotlights. Each one was aimed at a face. My studio, which smelled of paste and wet paper, now smelled of wine, hot cacao, and the faint, clean scent of the new paint on the gallery walls. The air was full of a low, expectant murmur. It was festive, but it was also tight, like the string on a violin, pulled to a perfect, tense pitch. Along the main wall, in a single, flowing line, were 108 masks. It was my life, curated. It started in the far corner, under a simple, hand-lettered card that read, 14, with the half moon, the original, broken cat mask from my bedroom wall, its silver line stark and definitive. From there, the timeline moved, the gray, stiff cereal box experiments, the first, hesitant whole faces, the theatrical masks from the Harbor Light Playhouse, the triptych from college, becoming, and then, the wall of paper souls, reassembled from the Blue Harbor installation, 100 faces cast from pulped, discarded words. I had invited the children from my workshops to be the docents. They were electric with importance, wearing their Silverline crew badges. I overheard Alex, the boy who had worn the robot mask to the gala, speaking to a tall man in an expensive suit. This one is the lion, Alex said, pointing to one of his own creations. Because sometimes you have to be loud on the outside so you feel brave on the inside. I picked yellow for the roar. The man was listening, rapt. In the back, near the workshop, Elias and Lena were manning a station. It was my one non-negotiable request, a free, hot cacao bar with mugs, not paper cups. It was our family ritual, the thing we did on cold nights, the thing that meant home. Lena, in a beautiful blue dress, was passing a mug to a local reporter, her face bright with a pride so profound it was almost tangible. Elias was behind her, his arms crossed, just watching. He caught my eye and didn't smile, but he nodded, a deep, affirming gesture that meant, "Your rhythm is steady. I see you." I felt a hand on my elbow. I turned, my heart jumping. It was Jude. He was alone. No wife, no new baby. He wore a suit that looked borrowed, and his hands were stuffed deep in his pockets. He looked like Thomas, but his eyes were Marielle's, and they were terrified. "Row," he said. His voice was rough. "Jude, you came." I wasn't going to," he admitted, looking at the wall of masks, at the story he had been a witness to. This is a lot. Rowan, it's all of it." He looked at me, and the years of silence were there, a heavy, cold weight between us. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words small, but clear in the party's hum. Back then, with everything, I was a kid, too. But I was older. I should have. I went with Dad. I stayed quiet. I'm sorry I let you be the one to go. I looked at my brother, the one who had chosen, the one who had stayed, the one who was, finally, here. I didn't have a speech. I didn't have an audit of his failures. I just had the present. I stepped forward and hugged him. He was stiff, shocked, and then his arms came around me. A sudden, desperate grip. "We were kids," I whispered into his shoulder, and I could feel him shaking. "We were all just kids, but we're here now. Jude, we're doing the right thing. Right now." I pulled back. His eyes were wet. "Yeah," he choked out. "Yeah, we are." A small gift bag was pressed into my hands. I looked up. It was Daisy. Her psychologist eyes were taking in everything, analyzing the crowd, the tension, and the love. "This is for the wall," she said. I opened it. Inside, nestled in silver tissue, was a mask, a cat mask. It was made of papier-mâché, painted a brilliant, shimmering silver. The ears were slightly crooked, the nose was a little too big, but it was bright, it was honest, and it was whole. "Daisy," I breathed. "You made this." "I did," she said, beaming, proud. The paste was stickier than I remembered, but he's all me. I hugged her, hard. He's perfect. The bell on the door chimed, and a different kind of energy entered the room. The festive hum dropped a few decibels. Marielle had arrived. She was not dressed for an art opening. She was dressed for a gala, in a deep green, floor-length gown that whispered money and boardroom. She was an ice sculpture in the warm, crowded room. Beside her, looking like a man being dragged to his own execution, was Thomas. He wore a tie, but his face was sullen, his eyes darting around, refusing to meet anyone's. Marielle spotted Kate, the reporter from the Gazette. She put a hand on Thomas's arm, manufactured a smile, and began to glide toward her. "Ah, Kate, wonderful. Can you believe this? Reunion? We must get a picture, a family picture." She was trying to bypass me entirely, to create her own narrative with the press, but as she moved, a polite, firm body stepped into her path. It was Rafi, Maya's cousin, the lawyer. I had hired his firm's event security specialist, a quiet woman in a smart black suit, for exactly this reason. "Good evening, ma'am," the woman said, her voice pleasant, but her body a living, polite wall. "Welcome to the exhibition. I'm afraid our press list is closed. All interviews are being routed through the gallery manager." She gestured to Maya. who stood by the desk, clipboard in hand. But please, enjoy the art. Marielle's smile froze. She had been intercepted. She had been rerouted. She had been, in the politest way possible, told no. Her eyes, cold and furious, found me across the room. I just lifted my mug of cacao in a silent toast. Thomas, now disconnected from Marielle's social maneuvering, shuffled over to me, his hands in his pockets. "Rowan," he grumbled. He looked at the wall, at the half-moon mask. This is just dragging up old business. You're making us look bad." "This is my work, Thomas," I said quietly. "This is the story of the art." He pulled a thick envelope from his coat pocket. He tried to press it into my hand. "Look," he hissed. "I had a lawyer look at it, a real lawyer. This is a new contract. It's safer. It protects you. It protects both of us. Just look at it." I didn't take the envelope. I just shook my head. "Thomas, not here." "Then where?" he demanded, his voice rising. I simply pointed to the small, beautifully lettered sign on the main desk, right next to the guest book. Maya had written it herself. The Silver Line rules. 1. We celebrate the process. 2. We are kind to the artists. 3. No family business transactions. We are a place of art, not finance. Thank you. Thomas read it. His face went from red to a sort of pale gray. He was being refused by a sign. He was being managed. He shoved the envelope back into his pocket, turned, and went to find the wine bar. The formal part of the evening began. I tapped a glass. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming," I said. This is overwhelming. This work. It was made in silence, for a very long time. To see it here, with all of you, is the greatest gift. But I'm not the only one who wants to speak. I am so honored to have a guest here, who was one of the first people to ever read my file. Ms. Alvarez, in her same sensible coat, stepped forward. She was holding a mug of cacao. She looked at the crowd. She looked at me. "My job," she said, her voice clear, "is files, hundreds of them. They are full of reports, and failures, and problems. It is very easy to forget that every file is a child. Rowan was a file, a difficulty integrating file, a no-plan file." She turned and pointed to the wall of masks. "This," she said, "is what happens when a child is not seen as a file, but as a future. This is what happens when a community, when a family like the Harts, doesn't just offer a placement, but makes a choice. When children are truly chosen, they don't just grow, they bloom." The room erupted in applause. It was the loudest, warmest sound I had ever heard. I was crying. Lena was crying. Elias had his arm around her, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated love. And in that moment of pure community, Mariel saw her last chance. As the applause died down, she pulled out her phone. She angled it, raised it. I saw the screen light up. She was going live. "Hello, everyone," she said, her voice brittle and loud, aimed at her phone. "Mariel here, at this just miraculous event. My daughter Rowan's gallery. It is a true family reunion, a miracle of..." The music in the studio, a soft, instrumental track, abruptly cut off. Maya had walked over to the sound system. She held the iPad that controlled it. "Ma'am," Maya said, her voice amplified slightly by the silence. "As it says on the invitation, there is no commercial photography or unauthorized streaming. Please turn that off." Mariel froze. Her face caught in a rictus of a smile. The phone still live. This is for my friends. Please turn it off," Maya said. "Or I will have to ask you to leave. This is a private space." The room was dead silent. Every eye was on Mariel, and then another voice, a man's, a donor from the hospital, a man on her board, had walked over. He gently touched her arm. "Marielle," he said, his voice low and full of a terrible, quiet authority. "Put the phone away. You are embarrassing the hospital. We will talk about this on Monday." Her hand dropped. The phone went dark. The attack was over. I let the silence hang for a beat. Then, I stepped forward, my voice clear. "Thank you, Maya, and thank you all. There is one last piece, if you'll all follow me." I led them through the workshop, now clean and pristine, to the small back room, the one I used for casting. Maya opened the door. The room was dark, lit only from within. Hanging from the ceiling were hundreds of long white paper strips, twisting and turning like a cyclone, forming a canopy, a shelter, and printed on every single strip, in clean, silver letters, was one word: no, 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 no. It was a shelter made of boundaries, a canopy built from the word that had saved me. It was beautiful, delicate, and absolutely unbreakable. I called it. No is a shelter. The crowd just stood. They looked. They understood. No one was speaking for me. No one was trying to get a photo. No one was handing me a contract. There was just the art, the work, the story. And then, quietly at first, and then growing, the sound of applause, not for a speech, not for a performance, but for the choice, for the final, silver line. The aftermath of the exhibition was not a celebration, it was an echo. The warm lights were gone, replaced by the cool, white hum of the studio's work lamps. The scent of cacao and wine had vanished, leaving only the familiar, grounding smell of plaster and drying paper. Elias, Lena, Theo, and Jude had taken Daisy home, a protective cluster, leaving me and Maya to close. But Marielle had lingered. She stood near the door, a silhouette in her expensive green gown, looking small and wrong in the industrial quiet. "I need a private moment," she said. It was not a request. It was a statement of need. "Okay," I said. I was too tired for anything else. The conference room was just my back office, a small, practical space with a desk, 3 chairs, and the quiet hum of the server. I sat behind the desk. It was my space, my territory. "Maya will be joining us," I said. Marielle's head snapped up. "This is a family matter." "This is my place of business," I replied. "And Maya is my studio manager. She takes the minutes for all official meetings. Please, sit down." Marielle sat, her posture rigid, a queen forced to negotiate in a foreign court. Maya entered silently, laptop in hand, and sat in the chair by the wall, her fingers poised. She was the witness. Marielle placed her manicured hands on the table. She did not look at me, but at a point on the wall just past my ear. "Rowan," she began, her voice low and strained, the performance of the gala stripped away. "That exhibition, it was unnecessary, but I need you to understand, all those years ago, I was in an impossible situation. I did the best I am, the best I could, under the circumstances. It was the speech, the one all absent parents prepare, the one that asks for absolution by claiming helplessness. It was a sentence designed to reframe abandonment as a tragedy, not a choice. I did not react. I did not yell. I did not cry. I simply reached for a binder that I had kept in my desk drawer for this exact moment. I opened it. "I appreciate that you feel that way, Marielle," I said, my voice as calm and flat as a drafting table. "But the circumstances look different from my perspective." I made a timeline. I slid the first page across the desk. Maya's fingers began to type, a soft, steady click, click, click. "Here," I said, tapping the first entry. 14 years ago, the meeting where you took Daisy and Thomas took Jude. And these are the court transcripts, the words, "No formal care plan for Rowan." I turned the page. "This is the call log from the group home. 15 attempts, 2 voicemails left, 0 returned calls from you." I turned the page again. "This is the letter you sent me. The one about your new family and your new house, addressed to my new placement, and here is the date of the Halloween I called, when you said you weren't ready to see me. I looked at her. Her face was bleach white. This isn't an attack, I said, my voice quiet. This is the data. This is the record. Your impossible situation was, for me, a complete and total absence. You are right. It was an impossible situation, and you and Thomas left me in it. You kept records? She whispered, horrified. I am the record. Marielle. The office door flew open, slamming against the wall. Thomas stood there, his face a blotchy, furious red. He had been drinking, and he had been listening. You! What is wrong with you? He roared, pointing at me. Dragging your mother through the mud? Bringing up the past like some kind of accountant? I am trying to protect my honor. My name. Your honor? Marielle snapped, her own composure cracking. You were trying to get her to sign a loan that would have bankrupted her. I was trying to build a legacy. For my sons. Something a father is supposed to do. Enough, I said. It was not loud. It was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the air like a blade. They both stopped, mouths open, and stared at me. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out 2 documents. I slid the first one, the FedEx envelope he had sent, toward Thomas. This is the loan guarantee. As you can see, I have written refused in red ink. Across every single signature line, I have dated it, and I have had it notarized. This is my final, legal answer. We are not discussing it again. He looked at the red ink like it was blood. I slid the second document toward Marielle. This is the Silver Line Atelier Community Partnership Policy. It is new. It states that all nonprofit collaborations, like Masks for Courage, must be fully transparent, must benefit the patients directly, and are explicitly forbidden from being used for the personal or social branding of any individual board member. The hospital can sign it if they wish to continue the program, but you will not be a part of it. Marielle's eyes scanned the legal language. She was looking for a loophole. Fine, she hissed. Fine, but the name, the Marielle and Rowan Mercer Courage Initiative. At least grant me that. Attach my name, as the founder, as your mother. No, I said. The program belongs to the children. It belongs to the hospital team. It does not belong to us. You owe me, Thomas bellowed, slamming his fist on the desk. I am your father. You owe me a second chance. I looked up from the papers, up from the data, and met his furious, pleading eyes. I don't owe you a chance, Thomas, I said, and my voice was so tired. I owe myself safety. I owe myself the security I have spent the last 14 years building from nothing. I am finally protecting the child in this room, and that child is me. Stop. Just stop it. Both of you. The voice from the doorway was choked, wet with tears. Daisy. She was standing there, Jude's hand on her shoulder, her face a ruin of mascara and rage. She must have come back for something she'd forgotten. Do you even hear yourselves? She cried, walking into the room, pointing at Marielle and Thomas. Do you even see her? Or do you just see a line of credit? A photo opportunity? She is your daughter. She is my sister. And you are still, after all this, still trying to take things from her. Why can't you just leave her alone? It was the first time in our lives. We were on the same side. We were in the same room. We were facing the same enemy. Ms. Mercer? Mr. Mercer? A new voice. Calm, professional, cool. Ms. Alvarez stood in the open doorway, holding her briefcase, her sensible coat buttoned. She was, as always, precisely on time for our 9 a.m. meeting to plan the new workshop. She took in the scene in one sweeping, competent glance. Marielle, pale, Thomas, furious, Daisy, crying, me, behind my desk, Maya, typing. I seem to be interrupting a private matter, she said, her voice mild. However, I am here for a scheduled professional consultation with Ms. Mercer regarding her ongoing partnership with the Department of Family Support. This office is now required. I'm afraid you'll have to leave." It was a gentle, bureaucratic, and absolutely brilliant eviction. She reminded them, with the full weight of the state she represented, that this was my professional space, and they had no standing. Marielle stood, gathering the shreds of her dignity. She was shaking. She looked at me, at Ms. Alvarez, at the mask on the wall. "It shouldn't have been this way," she whispered, the words finally, horribly, honest. If only if only they had just chosen differently, if they had just assigned you to him. I looked at her, and the anger was gone, replaced by a deep, aching pity. She still didn't get it. I gave a small, sad smile. "The court didn't choose, Marielle." I stood up, walking around the desk. "I did. I'm the one who chose. I chose the hearts. I chose this work. I'm choosing this." I walked to the office door and held it open. "This meeting is over." As they passed me, Marielle paused. She was looking at a small, silver frame I'd hung by the door, a new studio motto. She read it, her voice a hollow whisper. "No is not anger. No is design." "Yes," I said. "It's the structure. It's the armature. It's what lets the real work stand." They left. Marielle walked quickly. Thomas shuffled behind her. His shoulders slumped. There was no grand explosion, no final, satisfying slam of the door. Just the quiet, heavy, anticlimactic huff of old power. Finally, completely, running out of air. The next afternoon, the studio was back to normal. The scent of paste was in the air. My 8-year-old workshop class was here. "Okay, crew," I announced, clapping my hands. "It's the best day of the month. It's demolding day." A cheer went up. They ran to the shelves where their masks, simple faces molded on plaster forms, had been drying. "Gently. Remember," I said. I watched as a small girl with bright red pigtails carefully worked her fingers under the stiff paper edge. She pulled. The mask came free from the plaster form with a soft shh sound. "Whoa," she breathed, holding the perfect, hollow, gray shell of a face. One by one, they all peeled their creations free, and the room filled with a chorus of "wow" and "look" and "I made this." It was the sound of creation, the sound of something whole and new, where before there was just pulp. It was the sound of confirmation. That night, alone in the studio, I cleaned up. I went to the main wall, to my original half-moon mask, the broken shard that had started it all. I took the new mask Daisy had made me, the one with the crooked ears and the honest, silver paint. I hung it on the wall, right next to the broken one, the tear, and the mending, the past, and the present. I lit a single silver candle and placed it on the shelf beneath them. The flame flickered, and the light reflected in the 2 silver lines, making the crack and the whole face glow with the same steady light. This time, I am the one saying no, to let all the right kinds of yes finally have a place to live. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. I'd love to connect with you and hear your thoughts. And if you want to support this channel, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.